going to continue with our coverage of politics here. And these special elections, we've been focusing on them for the last few hours there in Florida. And we also have an update. I want to put this up there on your screen. Florida District 1, we do have with 93% of those estimated votes now counted. We now know that Jimmy Patronis is the projected winner according to the Associated Press. He was going against the Democrat Gay Valimont there in that district. They were running for that seat that was they were going to replace Matt Gaetz. Of course, you know, Matt Gaetz was initially there going to be in that seat before he was nominated by the Trump administration to have a position there in the cabinet. That fell through, but the seat was still open. So now I want to bring into the conversation my colleague Andrew Kraft. He was with you last hour when the other district in Florida, Florida District 6, was also called. Andrew, of course, we've been watching this. What are your thoughts as you're looking here at these results that have officially come in?
Yeah, Christina, good to be with you. Obviously, this is a good night for House Republicans there. This is not necessarily surprising. These were solidly red seats in solidly Trump districts there in Florida. We just got the race call. Now, who's Jimmy Patronis? He's the former CFO of the state of Florida. He's a close DeSantis ally, and he bested there Gay Valimont, the Democrat. Now, Gay Valimont also ran against Gaetz last cycle, coming up short, obviously. But to your point, this seat became open after Gaetz was first picked as Trump's first choice to be Attorney General. We know how that story ended. He withdrew from consideration for that and resigned that seat, leaving this vacancy open there in the House. And so remember, Christina, we've been talking about all of this, that House Republicans and the Trump White House were getting especially concerned about their very, very slim margins, so much so that they pulled the nomination of Elise Stefanik to go to the United Nations over some of those concerns. But like I said, I just want to reiterate, this is a good night for House Republicans there, especially in the state of Florida. Jimmy Patronis will now serve out the remainder of this two-year term there in the House. We'll have to see whether or not he's going to run for the seat again in 2026 for re-election. I would presume that he would. But Jimmy Patronis now going to Washington there. And so remember, we had been talking about whether or not these special elections were going to be some type of indicator or bellwether to see how Republicans were faring after all of the news coming out of the Trump administration, whether voters were responding to them either positively or negatively. And so you're not really getting much on that front about either how Democrats are doing or Republicans are doing. But I think it's pretty safe to say that no surprise here with these two special elections there in Florida, the 1st Congressional District and the 6th Congressional District, returning to Republican hands there. Now, some watchers of this who follow politics very closely were trying to see how well the Democrats would do even in the Democrats' loss, if that makes sense, to see whether or not they could gain ground from the 2024 results, whether or not Valimont or Weil kind of encroached on Trump's margins there in these particular congressional districts. We'll have to wait and see when all is said and done, when all the votes are counted. But Florida does this extremely quickly, extremely rapidly here, getting these race calls. So wanted to get this on everyone's radar here. But like you said, Christina, these are not the only elections we're following today. Now, in about 20 minutes, polls will close there in Wisconsin for yet another major race that we are following, and that is this open seat on the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. And so we're about to get results in once polls close there in Wisconsin. We've been talking with our Fox 6 Milwaukee colleagues about how national this state Supreme Court seat is there in Wisconsin. A liberal on the court retired, and so now it's a 3-3 split between conservatives and progressives there on the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. A liberal retired, and so this is for the majority of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. Will it stay a liberal majority, or will it now become a conservative majority? That is the question once polls close there in Wisconsin. This is a very, very highly watched race. A lot of money has been poured into this race there in Wisconsin. It's not only become the most expensive race in Wisconsin for a judicial seat, but the most expensive race in the United States in U.S. history for any judicial seat. And so we'll be monitoring those results very closely once the polls close there in Wisconsin at the top of the next hour. Christina.
Absolutely. And Andrew, we also heard from President Trump as well. Of course, we heard from him after the polls closed initially in District 6 as well, but he just put this up on Truth Social saying that both Florida House seats have been won big by the Republican candidate. The Trump endorsement, as always, proved far greater than the Democrats' forces of evil. Congratulations to America. And we did hear a bit earlier today from Weil. He was there in that district giving a concession speech. Unfortunately, the audio wasn't good enough for us to carry it here on air for Live Now from Fox, but he spoke pretty quickly after he did eventually lose that seat. And so, like you said, I've been listening to some of the conversations that you've been having with some of these political analysts and folks really looking to see how things will shape up as well. So it's been interesting to watch. I'm hoping we can put up some of those results that we had initially from the 6th district as well there in Florida, as we can see the margins there. But Andrew, you were able to bring that to folks live on air as well.
Yeah, we actually do have a statement in from the Weil campaign, from Weil himself. I'm just going to read it in part. He says this, Christina. Quote, the numbers didn't add up in our favor today. He said, we shouldn't be disappointed, however. This race was closer than anyone ever imagined. He said, in a district won by Mike Waltz by 32 points, we closed that gap by a historic margin. He says, an incredible gain. He says, this progress is because of our grassroots supporters across the country and the voters in this district, Democrats, Republicans, and independents who believe in a brighter and kinder future, saying, this result is also a warning sign to Donald Trump, Randy Fine, and the unelected oligarchs taking apart the government. He says, should they continue to steal people's hard-earned money and benefits like Social Security and Medicare, defund education, focus more on culture wars than lowering costs, the backlash is only beginning. So presumably that's what you're going to hear from these losing Democrats tonight, that they eked out and carved out space in the margins, so to speak, doing a little bit better than the Democrats in 2024. But of course, ultimately coming up very short there in these two Florida congressional districts, these special elections, the vacancies, Christina, now filled.